saw someone making fun of a new business model this week that was branding themselves as just like a bank without banking regulation, which just means that business will fail and will steal people's money along the way.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
We're coming upon the end of the year, man.
You get so excited. I
love it. Well, it's really because I love the beginning of the year. I love the beginning of the year. You're starting fresh. It's all about what's in store. How do we adjust this? What do we not adjust? Double down on strengths. I love all this stuff.
You're weird.
Oh, absolutely. But it's great. It's great. I love it. January 1st is my favorite day of the year, which is terrible because there's 364 more.
Some people make resolutions. My resolution is going to be like this audio we're about to play.
This is your whole resolution?
No, it's not. But can you play it for the people already?
I will.
Welcome to the world of extreme cheapskates.
Hey, what I did was I found some 2x4s, and these are styrofoam peanuts. So I just take all the peanuts, throw them in there, and then I cover it up with bubble wrap, and then this is a tablecloth, and it makes a perfect bed.
The average cost to furnish a one-bedroom house is $2,000, and clothing expenses for a single professional can reach $400 a year. Ron spends a total of $20 decking out both his house and his closet.
1, 2, 3 shirts and 2 pairs of shorts, and that's it. And by the way, I own no underwear and no socks. I teach cooking classes. You know, when I go to do any kind of demos, I take this all with me. I set up shop and basically do presentations to help people understand that you don't have to have a lot of money to eat well. Taking showers outside, washing all my clothes at the same time, saves me so much money. You get to get your showers.
There it is, Doogles. There
you get
it is.
to get your clothes.
I'm going to edit out one piece of this because I didn't realize they used your real name in the middle of it.
I'm flabbergasted by this one. I don't know where this came from. I assume it's not an Onion video editing.
It looks like it's a part of a PBS show. You know, like that. That's what it feels like. It's a segment of a PBS show.
A legit
I don't know what
documentary.
Yeah.
What's your take? When I sent this your way this week, do you think that guy has it all figured out?
No, I think this gentleman has almost nothing figured out. And I literally don't mean that as shade. I mean that as I'm trying to say something that's not going to pass judgment, but it's really, really difficult. So I'll say a couple other things. Something that you sent to me along with this is this guy a part of the FIRE movement, the financially independent retire early? This man's in his 60s. So he missed the whole retire early component of this, if that's what he is. It feels like someone to me that got caught up in a pattern of things and due to insecurities or something else, just like shut out the rest of the world. That's what it feels like to me. But this is the ultimate of saving money.
So the show talks about investing, and unfortunately that just blends with personal finance. So we have to talk about these things. Again, not throwing shade, but this is not my dream life, man. I'll tell you how you could save even more money. So instead of sleeping on styrofoam peanuts and 2x4s, you could just go get lost in the woods, man, and be a hunter-gatherer. Like that costs $0. If you don't have shelter, then you don't have to shower in your clothes at a public beach. So you could save. The video goes on to say he estimates he saves $1.74, I believe, each time he washes his clothes with the public shower or something. This has got to be a laundromat thing. No, guys, this is not the goal. Your goal is not to own 2 pairs of shorts, shower in public, and wash your clothes at the same time. It's not the goal.
Life goals are owning underwear. That's where my life goals stop.
official stance of the show.
Official
We
stance of the show.
support wearing underwear.
We do. We do. Oh, it's, but in all seriousness, this is an example of taking things to the extreme. You save money, you take it to the extreme. When you're doing styrofoam peanuts and 2x4s and washing your clothes. And by the way, I also wanted this gentleman to understand that a shower requires bathing one's skin. And if you're just bathing the clothes that you're in, like that's not, maybe they just didn't want to show the full shower rendition, and that's what was going on here. But
No. It very clearly claims that he showers in his. There's actually a video of this, him showering in his clothes. I don't understand. You're right. Like the soap that is on the Tide detergent or whatever. Again, it's not really multi-purpose. You're supposed to wash your body or wash your clothes. So I don't think Tide's so great for your skin. And then I personally have no idea how you would fully rinse the Tide off your clothes and off your body.
mysteries, life mysteries.
I think we just figured out the reason for no underwear though, because think about it. If you're washing and you got multiple layers on, you're in trouble. You gotta have some Tide lingering in there.
The moment he takes off his shorts, he's going to realize the importance of underwear. Just letting him know.
The funniest thing about when we talk about Tide is there's no way this guy paid for the premium laundry detergent. No way. He's probably using some seaweed particles or something.
Yeah. And when I get hungry, I just eat the Tide Pods. Doesn't work. Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. I had to share that with the listeners.
Yes.
I just could not do it.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit, reach into that fishbowl, and I want to talk about cognitive load. There's a blog post on minds.md called Cognitive Load is What Matters. This post is about coding programming. So I'm going to skip a lot of the details of the post because the high-level points that I took away, I think are applicable to many points of life, and I'm specifically going to apply it to the world of finance and investing. Cognitive load is what matters. That's the name of it. Here's one of the first things he says in the definition of cognitive load, because you might be like, what'd that be at? Here it is. Cognitive load is how much a developer needs to think in order to complete a task. Again, this is about computer programming. Let me abstract that out. Cognitive load is how much a person in any function performing any process needs to think in order to complete a task. Little book recommendation. One of my favorite books about design. It's really about user experience design or user interface design, but it could be about any kind of design. One of my favorite books is called Don't Make Me Think. It's awesome. And it's when you're putting together any sort of a process, a user flow, the moment someone has to try and figure out what you mean, you done lost is the point of that book. Don't make me think. All right, back to this. He says there are two types of cognitive load, one of which is I. The other of which we try and avoid. The one that's I is called intrinsic. And this is caused by the inherent difficulty of a task. It can't be reduced. It's at the very heart of the software development. So what he's saying here is, if you go about any sort of task, any sort of process, there's just the baseline stuff that you need to do in order to succeed in it. And like, that's what he's saying is intrinsic. Extraneous is the next one. Extraneous is created by the way the information is presented, caused by factors not directly relevant to the task, such as the smart author's quirks. It can be greatly reduced. And this is where he focuses the post here. So intrinsic is just a baseline. This is what it takes to do the thing. Extraneous is what the person that created the process, the person that created the task, the person that put together the instructions, it's what they layer on top. I'm going to pause there. You got comments so far?
No, I mean, you missed the piece that I think is the most standout piece of the article, which simply focuses on the average person holding like 4 buckets of memory.
Yeah.
And so you can do kind of 4 challenging things at a time. But once you get past that, that's when it's almost when you start to feel mental fatigue and maybe confusion too, right?
Yep.
That was just keep it to 4 or less. And if you're in the process of coding, or I know you're going to try and bring this back to investing, just don't focus on too many things at once. Keep it simple.
That's right. That's exactly right. And now to your point, I'm going to bring it back to finance and investing. I'm going to talk about what the system, the industry does, and then what you can do to yourself. So in the industry, we've talked about this a whole bunch on the podcast. Let's go to the extraneous. The industry says, oh, this is so complicated what you have to do. We also discussed this when we were talking about Howard Marks' memo from back in October. There's so many different ways you can diversify. It's complicated. Think about derivatives. You got to think about foreign exchange risk. You got to think about all these other things. You know what? Give me 1 point a year. I'll take care of that for you. That's 1% of your net worth every year. When I invest for you, I'll take care of it for you. Intrinsic in that world is go buy SPY. If you want to diversify, buy SPY and some bonds. Like that's one version of what you could say is like there's a baseline. You have to open a brokerage account, IRA, 401k, whatever it might be, and put your money in something diversified. That's the intrinsic version of this. Extraneous is everything the industry puts on it. For yourself, I think people also do this to themselves. There are a couple questions I wrote down as I was thinking about this. Do you confuse yourself with your own process? That's a question to ask yourself. Do you ever come to your own process and be like, wait, what was I thinking when if you have to say, what was I thinking when you've started to increase your cognitive load. The second is, how long would it take someone with reasonable base knowledge of what you do to understand whatever you put together? When I say reasonable base knowledge, I think that's important because if someone doesn't know what the US dollar is and you try and explain something to them, then it's going to be harder. But if someone generally gets like what a 401k is, what an IRA is, and you tell them what you've done and they're like, wait, what? Can you like write that down? You've probably gone too far. I'm going to pause. I want your reaction to that.
We just went to textbook land.
Okay. Let me bring it back to your shower, man.
They're good questions. I don't know if I have the cognitive load to deal with this right now, Doogles.
Yeah, I done messed myself up with my own questions. But just let's go back to Shower Man, the video, the video we just played with the sound. So the intrinsic version of save money is spend less than you make.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. The extraneous version of things that this person put on it is go find styrofoam peanuts, go find 2x4s left in the woods, go find soap that works with your laundry detergent, that works with your clothes, that you can bathe in the public. Like that takes it to this other, you're like, wait, what do I have to, why don't I just spend less than I make?
I mean, I can only imagine his cooking classes are like, pull up some grass from your front lawn and eat it.
And we're done. and we're done. We're done. You'll see this in the video we put on the Substack, skippydoogles.substack.com on Monday. So you can see it there. But in the video, when he's talking about his cooking classes, he has many pots and pans that he's putting into into the
you know how much those things cost? Way more than his wardrobe and his bed.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was a good piece. And again, it's mostly about computer programming, but you can abstract it out to everyday life and your own thought processes. Don't add more cognitive load than is needed. That's it.
Unless you're trying to, Doogles. Unless you're a consultant and you want your job to sound big and fancy so you can collect your $10,000 a day partner checks. I mean, come on.
That's right. I completely agree. And it also gets back to the 1% point. You add all this complexity. Seems like, ooh, you can try that on your own. Or
all right, I like talking to you about lots of things, but venture investing is one of my favorites.
Here we go.
There is a Vancouver, Canada-based company. There was called Bench Accounting, bench.co. I didn't follow the venture story too much, but I know there is over $100 million. I believe they raised Series C at $60 million middle of this year, maybe middle of last year, actually. And on December 27th of 2024, they shut the doors for good. Now, if you've never used bench accounting, which I assume is the majority of people listening, you don't know that one of the unique things is they don't tie into QuickBooks or any other accounting software. They basically have their own platform. And so if you're a user, you have to log into their website to get your financial picture. It's basically the only way it works. They also shut off access to their website, which is bold. I mean,
that screams desperation to me.
Yes. I don't want to really talk about the logistics of that. I want to talk about how poorly managed this has to be. One, if you're an accounting platform, accounting and tax prep, I should provide. We know that they were still onboarding chatter or onboarding clients and taking prepayment within the past few weeks, which is fine. I'm sure your day-to-day employee there did not know of the financial chaos going on behind the scenes that we have to assume is happening in order to shut your doors this abruptly. But yeah, you can't make it 4 more days through December 31st. That's bad.
Absolutely. And when you shut down today, like when they're saying we're shutting down today, that is a problem. The best/worst part of this for me going to the I don't know, maybe just being disconnected from how a customer feels is this. So they said, you can't access our website. Sorry about that. And good news is we do have a recommendation for a new service that you should use. There's this company that just raised $9 million like 4 days ago. Legitimately.
Okay. Yeah. So the backstory here is this is a founder-led company who eventually got raised enough money and the VCs kicked him out the door. He's written briefly about this. I won't really go into that either. The thing I want to talk to you about is just one, yes, find a way to keep your doors open for 4 more days. Step one. Step two, give people access to your platform when it's their only visibility to their financial life. Those are just basic customer things. It clearly offer them refunds, which they better do, but whatever. I don't understand who could possibly be running this thing that is managing their cash flow forecast, looking at their P&L and saying, oh my goodness, we're going to have to shut the doors on December 27th, and does not just use some basic sane principles to say, maybe we should raise customers' prices. Maybe we should lower our tiers of service. Maybe we should rationalize our. Just explain this to me. How does this happen? How?
I can't explain it to you, but what this reminds me of, makes me think about, is how people, I believe, often let the what something might look like to the outside, the way their community might think, the way the VC capital world might think, get in the way of basic, simple actions. So in this world, I could see, and I don't know, by the way, everything I'm about to say is all speculation, and I have no idea what's actually going on behind the scenes here. But I could see someone being like, ooh, if we do X, that's not what successful startups do. So that's going to symbolize that we're not successful. If we do Y, that's not what successful startups do. So we can't do that either. If we tell people that we're not profitable, as an example, ooh, then that's going to make customers panic. If we raise prices, oh, you don't raise. Remember what happened to this other company when they raised prices? And then they get themselves in this whole mental quagmire. And instead of doing the simple thing that businesses do when they're trying to run a successful business, they end up getting themselves down to the wire. Again, going back to my desperation point, when you are an accounting firm, like a firm that basically your fundamentals, the foundational stuff is the credibility and trust because it's the money of the organizations you're working with. When you say, sorry, today we're done, that's desperation in my eyes. And so to get to that point of desperation, they must have gotten themselves all wrapped up in a bowl of yarn, a whole bowl of it.
Completely. And I want to emphasize your speculative point, right? I haven't done a deep dive here, but the basics of this company's been around for 14 years. This company's raised more than $100 million. I fully understand Facebook in year 3 just taking every check that they can get so they can expand to the next country, the next university, the next audience, to try and get to the point where you have 3 billion users and then you just collect checks. I fully understand Uber taking all the money they could possibly get to go fight legal battles city by city all over the world to try and build their platform and have the network effect associated with that. I get how a lot of these companies have to have whatever 5-10 years worth of losses before you actually go cash flow positive. I don't get how you can be around for 14 years, be the largest provider of accounting services for small businesses in the world, they claim, and never find a way to flip that lever so you actually make money on your average customer. Like, it just means you have a terrible business. But so what's wrong with the VCs that just wrote them a $60 million check? I just do not get this.
Yep, agreed. What I hope isn't the case, because maybe not the other, but another potential something that could be happening behind the scenes here is some sort of fraud or something of that nature, where they were like, our liability is so, like, you got to shut it down.
Yeah,
like that's potentially another thing. I don't know. Hopefully we learn more, but that's wild. Everything you just described, I agree with, because this is wild. 14 years to give your customers a 0-minute heads up. It's wild.
When you're in the business of being a steady force behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like I saw someone making fun of a new business model this week that was branding themselves as just like a bank without banking regulation, which just means that business will fail and will steal people's money along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, It's the holiday season. I hope we all watched It's a Wonderful Life in the past week or two. There's a reason that banks need regulators because otherwise they
Yeah.
make stupid decisions.
Yeah. My initial reaction is, oh, so you're not just like a bank.
You're
Like,
just like a bank that's going to fail, is what you are.
yeah. This is just like a dog, but it has no paws and doesn't bark. Okay, so it's not a dog. I things like that, to your point, are immediate red flags for me. Immediate red flags. And I can just imagine, let's hopping back to bench for a moment. If you're an organization whose job it is to help me to manage my balance sheet, P&L, et cetera. Not to, when I say manage, I don't mean day to day, but I mean
Yeah.
like to get it straight, and you can't do your own, there's something there.
It's horrendous. It's really, really bad.
Well, let's
And
brighten
potentially, yeah, no, we can move on. But potentially, if I have my doom and gloom hat on, I wonder if it's foreshadowing to some of the things, the Buffett quote about when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. Like some of the other potential businesses that are barely surviving.
Yep.
And the tide might come out.
Mm-hmm. It's zombie companies, but in the private sector as opposed to publicly traded.
Okay, but then the last thing I just have to yell about: just raise your prices, people. Do not let your customers go away. If you're losing money hand over fist, like who wants to have a business go along for 14 years and still lose money month over month? That's the only thing that could be happening here. Raise your prices. People will either stay if they like your service or they won't, in which case you don't have a business anyway.
True. Truth be told, there it is. Okay, end of the year. I want to brighten up our mood a little bit here because this is just too sad. I want to talk about cryptocurrency scams. There's this piece called How to Lose a Fortune with Just One Bad Click that's on krebsonsecurity.com. The one of these, actually, I guess a few of these are like more sophisticated. Sophisticated might be too aggressive, but more sophisticated than what I've seen in some scams. And we talked about a few scams, not just crypto, in the past on here, the Zelle scams that we talked about. I want to highlight the first one that this walks through and then just give a little bit of advice. And sometimes advice like this, when you're not in the thick of it, it sounds like, yeah, when you're not in there, of course you want to think that way. But when you're in the middle of it, I know your brain might not be thinking the same way. So I want to acknowledge that. However, here's what happened. So apparently, at least my understanding of what happened here is there's this group of people, teenagers even it seems, but we can put that aside. But this group of people who are using Google Forms to kick off this scam. So what they did was they went into Google Form and created within the Google Form an alert, a security alert. And they made it so that the Google Form, once you submitted it, would send a copy to whatever email address you put in there. So if they were going to fraud somebody, they would put in blah, blah, blah at gmail.com in the form, submit the form, and then blah, blah, blah at gmail.com would receive this email from the google.com domain, because that's where Google Forms come from. So it's a legitimate domain that's coming to you. And it says, security alert, somebody's going to call you from this number. Their name is Josh. I think in this case, it was Daniel or Ashton, something like that. That's their name. They're going to call you. The person got the phone call, picked it up, and they're like, hey, said this is whatever that name was. And we just wanted to let you know that somebody in Germany is trying to hack your ish. They then Googled Meta. That's a little meta right there. They then Googled the phone number and said, okay, this phone number looks like it's a legit Google number. So they've gotten something from google.com. They had got this phone number, looks legit. And the person says, but we can unlock your account if you just click yes on this prompt. You're getting a security prompt. We've all seen the security prompts. You get that and it says, is this you trying to access it? You click yes, we're all good. Once they clicked yes, the fraudsters then had access to their Gmail. And the way that security prompt was sent was, as we've probably all seen, the person now knows your email. So you just try and log into that email. And then it says, we're going to send you like some kind of two-factor authentication thing. We're going to send you a prompt. So that's how they got the prompt sent. And the person clicked yes. There are a few lessons to be learned here. But the one thing that I believe is fairly universal, although fraudsters will probably figure out how to get around this, is do not react to prompts that are not triggered by you. This is a prompt that was like, they said, we're going to send you a prompt. If you didn't do an action that then made that come to you,
fair.
That's a flag.
Where it's a pretty good fraud is like if you call Apple support or whatever. Now that's an outgoing phone call rather than an ingoing phone call. But often they'll be like, give me your IP address, and then something will pop up where you can give them access to help troubleshoot, et cetera, et cetera. That happens on websites. That actually happens on bench.com, believe it or not, or used to. Yeah, it's a good scam. It's super scary. You intentionally left out how the $5 million was actually stolen? Because that's a key piece of this.
The Google Photos piece?
You haven't mentioned Bitcoin yet, have you?
No, I have not. I said it was cryptocurrency to start off with because there are different stories in here. But yeah, but this was crypto. It was Bitcoin. This one was Bitcoin specifically. The person had 45 Bitcoin that they owned. And what they did was they put their passphrase, or seed phrase, that's what it is. They put their seed phrase, they'd taken a picture of it and put it on their Google Photos, like many years ago, whenever they first bought, which is like a decade ago or something like that. So once this person got access to their Gmail, they got access to their full Google suite. And so they could go into their Google Photos, find their seed phrase, go into their Bitcoin account, boom, 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 transfer all that money out.
Well, and of course, because this person had 45 Bitcoin, which is a significant amount of money, and because it's cryptocurrency land, if for some reason you're to get locked out of your account or misplace, if you lose that, you truly don't have access to the funds. So you have to have all these backup measures. Of course, you're going to put it on Google Photos.
I thought Bitcoin was backed by the full faith of the.
Stop it. It's a really good scam. I mean, I never do this. I'm going to explain how sometimes low tech is better than high tech. I don't fundamentally believe this, but here's a real life example. One of the elder members in my family had a classic scam like this happen to them about 24 months ago. They bank with a local credit union that did not even have Zelle capabilities. So this hacker managed to get them on the phone, managed to get access to their computer, managed to watch them log into their bank account, but could not pull the playbook that says, "Oh, just hit the Zelle button and send me, the $10,000," because their banking system was so antiquated. So
there you go.
I think Bitcoin cryptocurrency is fine. Plays a big role in this. This would be harder to pull off, at least in terms of getting $5 million out of someone's account. Now, sure, you could talk them into sending you a wire for $5 million, but I would think the alarm bells would go off more quickly in that scenario.
It's one of those cases where when you have either, whether it's low tech, and it isn't about the technology, it's about the annoying nature that low tech provide. Like it's harder to get things done in a low tech world. Sometimes when it's harder to get things done, it is so frustrating. You're like, oh, why do we have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4 to get this thing done? So then you get rid of all the steps. And you're like, all right, now it's so easy to get it done. The other side of that is that the reduction of checks and balances or the full faith backing of whatever means that anybody can also do it very easily, and you don't have any sort of backup. It's one thing that we need to be careful. There's many, but I'm going to say one thing to be careful of with the Doge that's coming up on efficiency is we have discussed many times over the past few years in this pod how ridiculous it is with many things that occur in the government. And at least one time, we're going to realize that, ooh, that's why that thing exists right there, whether it was purposeful or not. Sometimes they're accidental, but I don't even mean to make that political necessarily. It's just when you come, the government's a big thing. That's the only reason I bring it up. Can I say one more thing in here before we transition?
Please.
Okay. So there's a piece of this where I didn't know who this was, but there's some guy named June Seth or something like that. And he apparently is a crypto fraud master. Like he unearths all the frauds in the world or whatever. He has this podcast and he got a phone call, it seems like, from the same person that defrauded, or same organization at least, that defrauded the gentleman we were just talking about a few minutes ago. He realized it was a scam. And so a few minutes into this conversation, he let the person know. He's like, look, I know this is a scam. Tell me how this works. And the guy's like, well, first of all, I'm a teenager, which is why I said that earlier. It's a teenager. And explained to him how it works and walked through everything. Unbeknownst to this teenager, again, this guy has a podcast and was recording the whole thing and then put it out into the world. What this teenager said was, he was like, I'm going to quote some of the things that are in this piece. Mm-hmm. It's almost like there's no consequences. I have small legal side hustles like businesses and beep that I can funnel everything through. If you were to see me in real life, I look like a regular child going to school with my backpack. You'd never expect that a kid is stealing all this. To go back to the first part of what I mentioned, it's almost like there's no consequences. That's a big statement to make when you're stealing millions of dollars from people. Nope. Millions of fake money from people.
Let's just say when you're stealing 45 Bitcoin.
Yeah, there you go. 45 Bitcoin. That's very accurate.
It's funny because when this happens, if this money was stolen from the U.S. government, put it that way, I think it might be returned to its owner already. So your statement about there's no consequences is an interesting one. There may be no consequences in this case. Now, it's very traceable. It's very transparent where the Bitcoin moved because that's all public. Is some sort of law enforcement actually going to attempt to retrieve this? I don't know.
We shall see.
Yeah, so I'm about to get put on probation because my fishbowl is more Magnificent 7.
Oh,
or
here we go.
The true believers call it Mag 7. Got on me for that a couple weeks ago. Like 3 stats, and then I'm just going to shut up. Here's performance for 2024. Apple's up 34%. NVIDIA's up 180%. Microsoft 17%. Alphabet 40%. Amazon 50%. Meta 70%. Tesla 83%. Okay?
Yeah.
Current PE multiples for the Mag 7, 39 times. For the S&P 500, 26 times. And for the S&P 500 excluding Mag 7, 21.5 times. The Mag 7 is 35%.
Wait, hold on.
Of the market.
Go back to what'd you say the S&P 500 PE ratio was?
25 times.
Okay. All right. There we go.
And then excluding Mag 7, 21.5 times. Total market cap of Mag 7, 35% of the S&P. While contributing, this is also amazing, 24% of the profits of the index. I will contend, you'll hear about this on our premium show next week, that it was nearly impossible to outperform the S&P 500 unless you held significant quantities of these 7 stocks and maybe an 8th stock, which is Broadcom. Which is, it's ludicrous. It's massive.
Absolutely. I'm going to go into real ludicrous, like throwing bows ludicrous in a moment here. One thing I loved, so there's a tweet from Christopher Bloomstrand. The first reply that I see in my feed to this tweet, and I'm not going to read the reply because I want to do my own Doogles rendition of it. He goes, whoa, here. You're talking PE ratios, and yeah, they might look ridiculous, but you shouldn't be looking backwards. You should look at forward earnings, PE ratios, okay? And then you'll see that this isn't ridiculous at all. Because if you look backward, Apple's PE is 37.5. Yeah, that's stupid. Never invest in that company. But if you look forward, Apple PE ratio is 34. Double down. Again, that was a complete paraphrase. That's not what the response said, but it basically did say that. It's like you should look forward, not backward. If you look forward, it's not as ridiculous. I don't even know what to do with that response. But one thing, and here's where throwing bows, get out the way, ludicrous is coming on right now. Tesla is an outlier of outliers in this Mag 7 view. Mm-hmm. So looking at this one little chart here, there's one little table. Tesla's PE, forward looking, 142. But you might be like, yeah, but maybe that's because projected growth, maybe they're generating cash up the wazeezy. No, their free cash flow yield is 0.2. They're in EBITDA or EBIT margin, 8.2%. Like there's nothing about the fundamental financials, at least according to this table, that you can see that would make you believe. It's just belief. Like this is pure belief and story and hyperbole behind this. You look at the rest of the Mag 7, and I would say they look ridiculously expensive and like really, really solid businesses that are ridiculously expensive. That's the way they look. Tesla looks like a really bad business, according to these. I'm just looking at this one. This one table. That is also even more expensive, like by an order of magnitude, 5 times more expensive, 4 times more expensive than the rest of it. It's
crazy. I mean, I don't think we need to debate individual companies. Google, Meta, PE's in the 20s. Maybe you could make some sort of case.
No, they're all ridiculous. All I'm saying is 142 with a 0.2 free cash flow yield is get out
even
the way.
More ridiculous. I mean, and I'll happily crow. NVIDIA was ridiculous 12 months ago, and they've pulled off a 1 in a million. Their free cash flow has gone up 4 times in the past year. No company pretty much has ever, no company of that size has ever done that.
Yeah, it's wild.
But yeah, I'll just let the number speak for itself. You
That's it.
don't make money long term buying PEs of, I mean, Tesla's backwards looking is basically 180 times. So if revenues remain the same, all it takes is 180 years where they don't pay taxes or reinvest any of their profits in the company for you to get back to square one.
There you go.
Seems like
Do,
a good
do what
bet.
you do what you will with that. Do what you will with that information. Okay, I got one more thing. One more thing in the fishbowl. There's a piece in Barron's called How to Prepare for a Lost Decade in Stocks. I just want to read, and this will be a lot of text, but I just want to read 2 paragraphs from this. Here we go. Dissenters say the bears are too pessimistic about the dynamic U.S. economy and its growth potential. Economist Ed Yardeni expects big productivity gains driven by innovations like AI to support the S&P 500's historically high forward price to earnings ratio, which sits at about 22. And he hasn't backed off his long-standing view that we are in a quote-unquote roaring 20s that will see the S&P 500 hit 10,000 by the end of this decade. And here's a quote from Yardeni. There's sort of a knee-jerk belief that the forward PE should be around 15. That is the historical average, he says. The problem with that is that there's nothing in the Bible or U.S. Constitution that says that the forward PE ratio has to revert to 15.
Mr. Yardeni, can I see you out back? Because you're in trouble. No, it's not in the Bible or the Constitution. People with brains don't pay more than about a PE of 15 because they're not idiots and they actually want to return on their investment at some point in the future.
So fully agree with that. If something's not in the Bible or U.S. Constitution, you can still invest in it or not, just in case people weren't aware. The other thing that stood out here, and I mentioned the quote unquote roaring 20s, for those that do not look at historical stock returns potentially as much as Skippy and I do, this is referring back to the 1920s. Those are the roaring 20s where the market went buck wild until the big crash in 1929. Here's a thing to me that got me all trippy. Either there's a world where you believe that the next 10 years are going to look like 2% a year, 3% a year, or less, as we've talked about, some of the big houses have said. And there's a world where you could say it's the roaring 20s and it's going to go wild. We're just going to keep getting buck wild. The S&P 500 right now is a little above 6,000. The end of the decade is in 5 years. For a little over 6,000 to get to 10,000 in 5 years, you need about a 10% per year annual return. So I actually don't know what Ed Yardeni is trying to say here. Because if I just look at that fact, I'd go, the US, innovation, AI, everything. We're going to have average returns, baby.
I know.
I don't know what to do with that. It's like it's as if, I'm not saying he did this, it's as if he just chose the next big round number and didn't actually think about it or look at fundamentals.
No, I was supposed to be done. I was done being fired up for the show, but this is just idiotic. Like, I fundamentally cannot get over the piece where people just make decent bets with their money. Like, why would you invest in 100 PE stocks? Why would you do that? That's never worked. It's not going to work. It defies logic.
And
say it's fine if you're saying, hey, I think the innovation that comes with AI means people might be willing to pay for a PE of 18 instead of a PE of 15 because for the same revenue that comes in the door, they're going to generate more net income. Basically, profit margins will rise because businesses will be more efficient. It's fine to say. That's not how I read this at all.
No. And going back, exactly, I fully agree with what you just said. And going back to the math, and I don't mean for math to dominate this, but going back to that pure math and combining that with what you're saying is I really don't. If you say I don't understand why you'd invest in 100 PE or whatever, just large PE stocks now, period. I'd say if your expectation is basically average returns in the future, then definitely don't invest in that. Like, why would you buy something that is super, like, historically shows that it's super expensive and super risky to get average returns? Like, I'm not going to buy AMC debt for a 4% yield.
Well, you're not an ape. I mean, come on now.
That's true. That's true.
If you don't know, that's what the AMC shareholders call themselves. I don't know. That quote just seems dumb. But clearly people believe it because we just walked through the current backward looking PE for Mag 7 is 39 times. So someone's buying this hogwash.
True. That's all I have to say. I did. I really don't mean this as shade at all. I looked at a bunch of Yardini's charts and data in the past, and it's been very useful. So there's that. And didn't realize that he had a book called Predicting the Markets, a Professional Autobiography. First of all, if you have to call your autobiography professional,
you're killing me over here.
All right, that's all I got.
All right. Well, guys, if this episode was too much for you, remember you can just shower with your clothes on and save $1.72. Everything will be better. All right. End of year. Happy New Year, all. Happy holidays. Thanks for hanging out with us. Next week, we will do portfolio breakdown for 2025. That's a premium episode. Feel free to check out skippydoogles.supercast.com for options there.
If you got listener mail, skippydoogles@gmail.com. We love it. Your thoughts, your feelings, your comments.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
See you next year.